The storm had raged for hours, battering the old lighthouse perched precariously on the cliffside. Beacon Point Lighthouse had seen many tempests in its long history, but this one seemed particularly violent, as if the sea itself was angry. Inside, 3 lighthouse keepers huddled around a small table in the dimly lit kitchen. Jack, the eldest and most experienced, stared into his cup of tea, lost in thought. Henry, in his 30s, nervously tapped his fingers on the table, and young Tom, barely out of his teens, glanced anxiously at the rattling windows. "We'll be fine," Jack said, though his voice lacked conviction. "This lighthouse has stood for 100 years. This storm won't bring her down." "Hope you're right," Henry muttered. "This place gives me the creeps." Tom nodded in agreement. "I keep hearing things like whispers in the walls. Thought it was just the wind, but now." Jack's face hardened. "It's just the storm. The wind howls through the cracks, nothing more." But Jack knew better. He had heard the stories, whispered among the old-timers. Stories of a keeper who had vanished without a trace many years ago, leaving behind only his journal, filled with ramblings about a malevolent presence. The night deepened, and the storm showed no signs of abating. They took turns keeping watch, making sure the light stayed burning, guiding ships through the treacherous waters. As Tom's shift ended, he stumbled back into the kitchen, pale and trembling. "Something's out there," he whispered. "I saw a figure out by the rocks." Jack's expression tightened, probably just the shadows playing tricks on you. But Tom shook his head vehemently. "No, it was a man. He was staring at me." Henry stood up. "I'll go check. Maybe someone got caught in the storm." Jack reluctantly nodded, and Henry grabbed a flashlight, heading out into the howling wind. He made his way to the edge of the cliff, the beam of his flashlight cutting through the darkness. He saw nothing but the churning sea and jagged rocks below. Just as he was about to turn back, he heard it, a low, guttural whisper carried on the wind. "Leave this place." Henry spun around, shining his light wildly. The beam fell upon a figure, half hidden in the shadows. It was a man, or what had once been a man, his eyes glowing with an unnatural light. Henry's heart pounded in his chest as he stumbled backward. The figure moved closer, and Henry could see the rotted, seaweed-covered clothes, the skeletal hands reaching out. "Leave before it's too late." Henry ran, terror clawing at his throat. He burst back into the kitchen, slamming the door behind him. "There's something out there," he gasped. Jack's face went pale. "What did you see?" "A ghost," Henry choked out. "It told us to leave." Jack's mind raced. He had heard of the ghost of the former keeper, a man named Samuel, who had gone mad and drowned himself. But he had never believed the stories, until now. "We can't leave," Jack said firmly. "The storm's too fierce. We'll have to wait it out." Hours passed, each minute stretching into an eternity. The storm's fury showed no sign of waning, and the oppressive atmosphere inside the lighthouse grew thicker. Jack, Henry, and Tom took turns keeping the light going, each feeling the growing presence of something unseen. Tom's fear became palpable. "I don't want to go back out there," he pleaded. "We have no choice," Jack replied, though his own fear was barely concealed. "The light must stay on." It was during one of Jack's shifts that he found the journal, tucked away in a dusty corner of the keeper's quarters. Its pages were yellowed with age. He flipped through it, his eyes widening as he read Samuel's final entries. "Something is here with me. I hear its whispers, feel its cold touch. It wants me to leave, but I cannot abandon my post. It grows angrier with each passing day." Jack shivered, closing the journal. The temperature in the room had dropped noticeably. He could see his breath misting in the air. The whispers grew louder, more insistent. Jack stumbled back into the kitchen, the journal clutched in his hands. "We need to stick together," he said, his voice trembling. "It's Samuel. His spirit is still here. He wants us gone." Henry looked at the journal, his face ashen. "What do we do?" "We survive the night," Jack replied. "We keep the light burning, and come morning, we leave this place for good." But the night had other plans. The whispers turned into wails, filling the air with a cacophony of torment. The walls seemed to close in, the shadows stretching and twisting into grotesque forms. Tom was the first to break. "I can't take it," he screamed, running towards the door. But it slammed shut with a force that shook the building. The ghostly figure of Samuel stood before them, his eyes blazing with fury. "You will not leave," Samuel hissed, his voice echoing with the rage of the drowned. Jack stepped forward, his heart pounding. "We mean no harm. We're just here to keep the light burning." Samuel's face twisted into a grim smile. The light. Yes, the light. It was my duty, my curse. You will suffer as I did. Suddenly, the light in the tower flickered and went out. The room plunged into darkness, broken only by the occasional flash of lightning. Panic set in as they realized the beacon had failed. "We need to get it back on," Jack shouted. "Henry, come with me. Tom, stay here and try to stay calm." Jack and Henry raced up the stairs to the light room. The lantern was shattered, the mechanisms destroyed as if by some unseen force. Desperation clawed at Jack's mind. Without the light, ships would be lost to the storm. "We need to fix it," Jack said through gritted teeth. "Grab the spare parts." As they worked frantically, the air grew colder, and the presence of Samuel seemed to grow stronger. His whispers turned to screams, a chorus of agony that threatened to drive them mad. Downstairs, Tom cowered in a corner, the journal clutched in his hands. He read the final entry, his eyes wide with terror. "I cannot endure this torment any longer. The sea calls to me, offering a release from this curse. I go now to join the others, to find peace in the depths." Tom's mind raced. Samuel had been driven mad by the isolation, the endless watch, and now his spirit sought to do the same to them. Suddenly, the door to the kitchen flew open, and Tom looked up to see Samuel standing there, his eyes burning with an unholy light. "Leave, or join me." Tom screamed, throwing the journal at the apparition, but it passed through him, scattering pages across the room. Samuel advanced, his skeletal hand reaching out. Upstairs, Jack and Henry managed to repair the lantern, the light flickering back to life. But as it did, a terrible scream echoed from below. Jack's heart sank. Tom. They raced back down, finding the kitchen empty, the door wide open. The storm raged on outside, but there was no sign of Tom. "He's gone," Henry whispered, his face pale. Jack clenched his fists. "We need to get out of here. Now." They made their way to the door, but Samuel's figure blocked their path. "You cannot leave," he hissed. "This is your fate, your curse." Jack faced the ghost, his fear turning to anger. "We're not like you. We won't be trapped here forever." Samuel's eyes blazed. "You will suffer as I did. You will know my pain." But Jack stepped forward, the journal in his hand. "You wanted peace, Samuel. You wrote it yourself. Let us go and find your own peace." For a moment, Samuel's face softened, the rage dimming. "Peace," he whispered, his form flickering. Jack seized the moment. "We'll keep the light burning, but let us go." Samuel's figure wavered, and with a final, anguished cry, he vanished. The oppressive cold lifted, the whispers ceased. Jack and Henry wasted no time, racing out into the storm, the light of the lighthouse guiding their way. As dawn broke, they reached the nearest town, bedraggled and exhausted. They told their story, but few believed them. The lighthouse was inspected, the journal taken as evidence, but the haunting was never officially acknowledged. Years later, the lighthouse still stands, its light a beacon in the darkness. But those who know the story of Beacon Point keep their distance, especially on stormy nights, for they know that somewhere in the shadows the ghost of Samuel still watches, waiting for the next keepers to claim.